I am not resisting. Hands up now.
I did not do anything.
The night air was still, broken only by the faint hum of traffic lights switching red to green. Marcus Hale adjusted his tie as he walked toward his car, the glow of a convenience store sign washing over his sharp suit. He just left a late briefing, his ID badge tucked discreetly in his pocket. The world saw a tall black man in the wrong place at the wrong time. A police cruiser rolled up, tires crunching against gravel. Doors slammed. Flashlight seared his eyes. "Hands where I can see them." Marcus froze, palms open. He spoke evenly, his voice edged with disbelief. "I'm on my way home." The officers fanned out, faces hard with suspicion. One aimed a hand at his waistband. Another muttered under his breath, "Looks like he fits the description." The words sliced deeper than the beams of light. Marcus felt the cold weight of being reduced to a silhouette, stripped of his name, his career, his humanity. He tried once more, steady but firm. "You're making a mistake." The snap of cuffs cut the air. Steel bit his wrists. His chest burned, not from fear but from fury, from the knowledge that his truth was irrelevant. Then one officer leaned close, his whisper venomous. "You people always think you can talk your way out." A crowd was gathering. Phones lifted. Cameras blinked alive. Marcus's ID badge slipped from his pocket and clattered against the pavement. The flashlights froze on the gleam of the seal. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The silence that followed was louder than any siren. Marcus Hale adjusted the knot of his tie as he stepped out of the federal building, the clock above the doors glowing just past 11. His briefcase weighed heavy at his side, filled with files that felt less pressing than the fatigue pressing against his skull. The city's late-night hum surrounded him. Neon signs, distant horns, a siren far away. He slid his badge into his inner pocket. Habit, protocol. No one needed to know who he was until they had to. Tonight he only wanted the quiet ride home. Gravel crunched behind him, tires rolling slow. Marcus turned his head just as the cruiser's headlights washed him in white. Two uniformed cops stepped out, hands already hovering near their belts. "Sir," the taller one barked, flashlights snapping up into Marcus's eyes. "Stop right there." Marcus froze, briefcase dangling. "Is there a problem, officer?" "You tell me," the shorter cop said, circling wide. "What are you doing out here this late?" Marcus blinked against the glare. "Leaving work." He raised the briefcase slightly. "I'm heading home." The taller one closed the distance, scanning Marcus's suit, his skin, his silence. "We got a call about someone fitting your description breaking into cars." Marcus's jaw tightened. Description. Always the same word, empty enough to mean anything, sharp enough to cut everything. "I'm not breaking into anything. I just left the federal building." The shorter cop snorted. "Uh-huh, federal building, sure. You got ID?" Marcus slipped his hand slowly toward his pocket. The taller cop stiffened, hand on his holster. "Easy," Marcus said, voice calm but cold. "I'm reaching for my wallet. Hands up now." The bark rattled the quiet street. Marcus's arms rose. The briefcase swung gently from his wrist. The light burned into his pupils, shrinking the world into glare and shadow. "You fit the description," the shorter one repeated, stepping closer. Tall, black, dark suit. "Matches what dispatch gave us." Marcus swallowed. "That's not probable cause." The taller cop smirked. "You a lawyer now?" "I know the law," Marcus said flatly. It didn't matter. He saw it in their faces. The decision had already been made. The taller cop grabbed his arm, spinning him against the hood. Metal pressed against his ribs. Marcus's cheek scraped cold steel. "Come on," Marcus gritted out, struggling not to jerk away. "This is unnecessary. Stop resisting. I'm not resisting." His voice echoed down the block, catching the attention of shadows moving near the convenience store. A few people stopped. One raised a phone. The red dot of a camera glowed in the corner of Marcus's vision. The cuffs snapped shut. Pain jolted up his wrists. Marcus inhaled slow, forcing control. He knew anger would be used against him. He knew every word was a weapon they could twist. Still the fury burned. "You're making a mistake," he said, voice low, steady. The shorter cop leaned near his ear. You people always think that? Marcus closed his eyes. The words cut deeper than the steel. The crowd grew. Murmurs, recording phones. Marcus felt the heat of humiliation crawl over his skin. As they pushed him toward the cruiser, his pocket tore slightly. Something slid free, the badge. His badge. It clattered onto the asphalt, the gold seal catching the glow of the streetlight. The taller cop froze mid-step. His eyes flicked down, then up to Marcus. His hand tightened on Marcus's shoulder. For a beat, no one moved. The street hummed with the weight of silence. Every witness holding their breath. The flashlight beam steadied on the badge. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The fluorescent lights buzzed like hornets above the holding cell. A low mechanical whine that gnawed at Marcus Hale's patience. The walls were painted a yellowed gray, cinder blocks scarred by years of fists and graffiti. A thin steel bench ran along one side, cold enough that the chill seeped through his slacks. His wrists bore angry red marks where the cuffs had bitten in. He rubbed them absent-mindedly, staring at the floor's cracked linoleum. Every detail felt designed to shrink him. The rank smell of sweat and disinfectant, the echo of boots in the hallway, the deliberate slowness of time. 2 other men occupied the cell. One sat slouched against the wall, eyes half closed, muttering to himself. The other, a younger man in a hoodie, kept glancing at Marcus as though trying to place him. "You knew?" the kid asked finally. His voice was raspy, worn down. Marcus didn't answer right away. He'd been trained in interrogation rooms, trained to keep silence as a weapon. But this wasn't an interview. It was erasure. "Wrong place, wrong time," Marcus said, voice clipped. The kid chuckled bitterly. "That's all of us in here." Keys jangled outside. 2 officers passed, laughing about a game on TV, not even glancing through the bars. Marcus felt the heat rising in his chest. He stood stepping toward the gate. "I need to make a call," he said, firm, projecting authority. One officer paused, smirking. "Sit down. Calls come later." "I have the right to—" The officer cut him off, tapping the bars with his baton. Tap, tap. "Rights don't move faster just because you talk nice. Sit." Marcus locked eyes with him, every muscle in his jaw taut. Training told him to de-escalate, to measure tone. But every second of dismissal stacked like bricks on his chest. The officer walked away. Laughter trailed down the corridor. The younger man in the hoodie whistled low. "They don't like it when you sound smart. Fess, keep it down." Marcus sat back slowly, his hands trembling despite his effort to stay steady. He thought of his badge lying on the asphalt, the gleam that should have shielded him, the seal that was supposed to mean something. But here, in this cell, he wasn't Agent Hale. He wasn't even Marcus. He was just another body in the lineup. Hours bled out. The buzzing lights never dimmed. At one point, a sergeant stopped by, thick-necked, eyes cold. He held Marcus's file like it was nothing more than a coffee order. "Breaking into cars, huh?" the sergeant said, voice loud enough for the others to hear. "That's false," Marcus replied. "Check the ID they confiscated." "I work for the federal—" The sergeant barked a laugh, slamming the file shut. "Sure you do. Every guy who sits in that spot's got a story." He leaned close, the smell of coffee and cigarettes curling from his breath. "Here's mine. You'll sit tight until I say otherwise." "Understand?" Marcus's fist curled on his knees. "You're obstructing—" The baton hit the bars, rattling the steel, cutting him off. The sound rang sharp in his ears. The sergeant stepped back, satisfied. "That's what I thought." He walked away, boots striking concrete with slow, deliberate rhythm. Silence returned. The kid in the hoodie shook his head. "Man, you gotta let it go. They don't care who you are." Marcus leaned forward, pressing his palms together, breathing slow through his nose. But his chest burned. His throat tightened. He wasn't used to being voiceless. He wasn't used to being small. He thought of his sister, Maya, of her voice always reminding him that his uniform didn't erase what others saw first. "They'll see you as a black man before they see you as anything else." He used to push back on her cynicism. Tonight, her words carved into him with surgical precision. Boots again. A younger officer appeared, clipboard in hand. He glanced at Marcus, then frowned. "Hey, what's your full name?" "Hale, Marcus Hale." The officer scribbled, eyes narrowing. For a second, Marcus thought he saw recognition, but the clipboard snapped shut. "Sit tight." The officer walked away. Marcus exhaled. The thin thread of hope dangled just out of reach. Maybe someone had started pulling records. Maybe his supervisor had already been alerted. But in this cell, minutes dragged like years. Each denial, each mocking word layered the humiliation deeper. His authority, his rank, his oath, none of it mattered against the blunt edge of assumption. The buzzing light flickered. Shadows stretched across the wall. Marcus pressed his back against the cold cinder block, eyes unblinking. He whispered under his breath, words no one else could hear. "They'll see who I am soon enough." The cell door clanged shut again. Darkness thickened. And still, no phone call came. The metallic shriek of the cell door echoed as two uniformed officers entered, their eyes avoiding Marcus's. Behind them strode a man in a tailored Navy suit. His stride quick, his expression thunderous. Special Agent in Charge David Whitaker, Marcus's supervisor. The moment Whitaker's gaze landed on Marcus, cuffed and sitting on the steel bench, the air shifted. "What the hell is this?" Whitaker's voice cracked across the room like a whip. The sergeant who had mocked Marcus earlier appeared in the doorway, his smirk forced into something resembling professionalism. "Just a routine detainment." Detainment? Whitaker cut in, stepping forward until the clipboard in the sergeant's hands quivered. "That man is Agent Marcus Hale, one of mine. You had him sitting in here like a criminal for how long?" The younger officer with the clipboard fumbled. We were just following a description, sir." He matched what dispatch reported. Whitaker turned on him, fury sharp in his eyes. "A description? 6-foot black male in a suit? Do you have any idea how many professionals in this city fit that profile? Do you have any idea who you just assaulted and humiliated?" Silence clung to the room. The men in the cell shifted uneasily, sensing the tectonic shift in power. Marcus stood slowly, his cuffed wrists lifted red and raw. His voice was measured, each syllable carrying a restrained fury. I told you exactly who I was." The sergeant cleared his throat. Agent Hale didn't provide credentials when asked. "Because you cut him off," Marcus snapped, stepping closer, his shoulders squared. "Because every word out of my mouth was dismissed before it left my lips." Whitaker's face darkened. "Uncuff him, now." The key scraped in the lock. The metal released. Marcus flexed his wrists, the sting of freedom almost as bitter as the confinement. Whitaker's glare swept the room. "You've humiliated a federal agent, violated protocol, and undermined your own department. You think this disappears?" The sergeant shifted uncomfortably, but pride kept his jaw tight. "With respect, Agent Whitaker, maybe your man should have made himself clearer. This doesn't have to become a bigger issue than—" Marcus cut in, voice low but lethal. "You mean bigger than the video circulating online right now? Because people were recording, and they saw everything." A flicker of panic passed through the sergeant's eyes. He tried to recover, but the silence that followed swallowed him whole. Whitaker turned back to Marcus. His voice softened, but only slightly. "Let's go. We'll handle this at the office." Marcus gathered himself, every movement taut with anger. As they left the holding cell, whispers trailed behind them. Prisoners murmuring, guards stiffening. Reputations unraveling in real time. Out in the corridor, Whitaker leaned close enough that only Marcus could hear. "We'll make them pay for this. But you need to keep your head. Don't let them bait you." Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked down at his wrists, still ringed with red. They already did. The walk out of the precinct was a gauntlet of stairs. Officers froze mid-step. Clerks stopped typing. Every eye tracked the tall black man leaving with his badge now clipped, gleaming under the harsh lights. The captain of the precinct appeared at the doorway, blocking the exit, forcing a brittle smile. "Agent Hale, misunderstandings happen. No hard feelings, I hope." Marcus stopped cold, eyes locking on the captain's. His voice was flat, cutting. "This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice." The captain's smile faltered. Whitaker stepped in, his tone like stone. "We'll be in touch, Captain. Expect paperwork." As Marcus stepped into the night air, free at last, he inhaled deep. But it didn't feel like freedom. The humiliation clung, the echoes of cuffs still tight on his skin. Behind him, the precinct door closed with a hollow slam. In his chest, one thought burned: they will not bury this. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his jacket draped over the back of the chair, his badge lying in front of him like an accusation. The red marks around his wrists hadn't faded. They burned every time he flexed his hands. Across from him, his sister Maya leaned forward, eyes sharp. She'd been waiting all evening, arms folded, anger rolling off her like static. "They put you in a cell," she said flatly. "You, with your badge in your pocket the whole damn time." Marcus rubbed his forehead. I told them who I was. It didn't matter. It never matters, Maya snapped. You think the suit, the tie, the title would shield you? They don't see any of that. They saw your skin first, and that's all they needed. He met her eyes, jaw tightening. I know what it looks like, Maya, but I can't afford to what? To tell the truth? She leaned closer, her voice low, trembling with fury. They humiliated you in front of strangers. They put hands on you, and you're sitting here worrying about your career? Marcus exhaled, slow and heavy. The Bureau's weight pressed on him. He remembered Whitaker's warning, the clipped command to keep his head. Every syllable meant don't make waves. I can't let this derail everything I've worked for, Marcus said. Maya slammed her palm against the table. The badge rattled. It already has. Silence held between them. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice frayed. You think I don't want to fight? Every second of that night is still in my head. The cuffs, the voices, the way they looked at me like I didn't matter. I want to burn it down, Maya, but if I push too hard, the Bureau will distance itself. They'll make sure I'm the one who gets buried. Her expression softened just a little. She reached across the table, resting her hand near his. So what, you stay quiet? You swallow it? That's not justice, Marcus. That's surrender. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The tension in his chest left no room for words. The apartment door clicked open. Agent Daniels, his longtime partner, stepped inside. He carried himself carefully as if the air itself was fragile. I heard, Daniels said softly. Half the office has. Marcus looked up. His partner's face was pale with anger. They kept you in holding? After you identified yourself? Marcus nodded once. Daniels' mouth tightened. That's not procedure. That's targeted, Maya cut in, her voice edged with fire. Of course it was targeted. And if you think this will be handled quietly, you're out of your mind. Daniels glanced at her, then back at Marcus. She's not wrong. The video's already making rounds online. People are asking why one of our own was treated like a suspect. This is going to blow up. Marcus's chest tightened. I don't want to be a headline. You don't have a choice, Daniels said. It's out there. The question is, do you let them spin it? Or do you tell your story first? Marcus's silence stretched. His mind raced between futures, one where he stayed quiet and lost himself, another where he spoke and risked it all. Maya's hand closed over his. Don't let them define you by their lies. Tell the truth. If not for yourself, then for every kid who saw that video and thought, that could be me. Her words pierced through the fog. Marcus swallowed hard, his voice a whisper. If I do this, there's no going back, Daniels nodded. Then maybe it's time you stop going back. The fridge hummed again. The badge glinted under the light. The silence pressed down, but this time it carried weight, not defeat. Marcus looked from his sister to his partner. The anger was still there, raw and searing, but now it was shaping into something else. Resolve. The morning broke with a sharp chill, but Marcus didn't feel the cold. His phone buzzed nonstop on the table, vibrating against the wood like a trapped insect. Every notification carried the same pulse. The video was out. Maya had the news on before he even walked into the living room. The screen showed shaky cell phone footage. Marcus pressed against the hood of the car, the cuffs biting into his wrists, his voice steady as he said, "You're making a mistake." Then the camera zoomed down to the badge that clattered on the asphalt. The words Federal Bureau of Investigation were blurry but unmistakable. The anchor's voice cut through. The video has sparked outrage online, with many questioning how an FBI agent could be mistaken for a suspect and detained despite identifying himself. Maya muted it, eyes on her brother. This is it, Marcus. You can't hide from this anymore. Marcus sat down slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. His phone buzzed again. A text from Daniels. Press asking for comment. Don't say anything yet, but silence didn't stop the noise. Social media swarmed with clips, hashtags multiplying by the hour. Some voices demanded accountability. Others called him a liar. Commentators split the screen. One panelist praising the courage of local law enforcement, another shaking her head in disbelief at the systemic bias on display. Marcus's chest tightened as he scrolled. Tweets, comments, threads dissecting his every move. Strangers debating his worth, his identity, his truth. Look at this, Maya said, shoving her phone toward him. A headline blared. Was he really an FBI agent? Sources questioned credentials. Marcus's jaw clenched. They're already trying to discredit me. Of course they are, Maya shot back. That's how it always works. They smear you so no one asks what they did. The landline rang, rare, jarring. Marcus answered. Whitaker's voice came sharp and urgent. Don't speak to the press, Hale, not a word. The Bureau is drafting a statement. A statement? Marcus said, heat rising. They dragged me into the street, cuffed me like a criminal, and you want a statement? Whitaker's tone hardened. We have procedures. If you go rogue, you'll make this worse. For yourself, for the Bureau. Trust me. Marcus hung up slowly, his hand shaking. Maya stared at him. They want you quiet. They'll bury this if they can. The TV volume snapped back on mid-report. Footage of protesters gathering outside the precinct. Signs raised high. Justice for Marcus Hale. Daniels arrived not long after, his tie loosened, his face tight. He dropped a newspaper on the counter. The front page was a still from the video. Marcus's face pressed against the hood. The headline, Agent or Agitator. They're framing the story, Daniels said, voice low. The union's already putting out statements. They're calling it a misunderstanding. They're painting you as hostile, uncooperative. If we don't counter this, that version sticks. Marcus pressed his palms against the table. The wood felt unyielding, but it was the only thing keeping him steady. I didn't want this, he muttered. No one does, Daniel said. But it's here. And if you don't speak, you become whatever they say you are. Maya stepped beside him, her voice steady, fierce. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about every time they've done this to someone without a badge. You have a platform. Use it. The buzz of his phone returned. Another text. This one from an unknown number. We're watching, Agent Hale. Careful what you say. Marcus stared at the words until they blurred. His throat tightened. Daniel saw his face. Threats? Marcus nodded once. Maya's eyes flared. They're scared. Good. That means you have power. Marcus lifted the badge from the table. Its shine no longer comforted him. It mocked him. It was proof of everything he'd earned, and proof of how little it protected him. I tell my story, he said finally, voice low, and they'll come for me harder. Daniels met his gaze. They'll come for you either way. The difference is whether you stand silent or you stand visible. The TV cut back to live footage outside the precinct. The chants grew louder. No more silence. No more silence. Marcus closed his eyes. The choice was no longer his. The story had already escaped. When he opened them again, resolve flickered behind the exhaustion. They wanted to make me invisible, he said. Now they can't look away. The first wave hit before sunrise. Marcus woke to a flood of notifications. News articles, blog posts, tweets, all laced with the same venom. Headlines twisted his story into something unrecognizable. Agent Hale known for attitude during traffic stops. Sources say, law enforcement union defends officers. Our men acted appropriately. Federal agent or radical troublemaker. Maya scrolled furiously, jaw clenched. They're dragging your name through the mud. Look at this garbage. She shoved her phone toward him. A pundit on cable news sneered, the caption reading, Questionable conduct by FBI agent sparks controversy. Marcus barely glanced at it. His chest felt heavy, the weight of the smear campaign pressing down harder than the cuffs had. By mid-morning, Daniels arrived at his apartment with 2 coffees and a grim expression. It's bad, he said, handing one over. The union held a press conference an hour ago. They doubled down. Maya turned the TV up. The screen showed a police union representative, thick-necked and defiant, standing before a podium. Our officers responded to a call in good faith, the man declared. Mr. Hale escalated the situation by refusing to comply with commands. Badge or no badge, behavior like his endangers officers and the public. We stand by our men. Marcus felt his hands curl into fists. Refused to comply? His voice cracked with disbelief. I stood still with my hands up. Daniels put a hand on his shoulder. They don't care about the truth. They care about control. The press questions began. What about the video footage? The union rep smirked. Videos don't tell the whole story. You can't hear what was said before or after. Context matters, Maya muttered under her breath. Context? They mean lies. Marcus paced the room, his voice rising. They're rewriting it in real time. By next week, people will believe I attacked them. Daniels followed his movement with sharp eyes. That's why you need to speak, Marcus. Get in front of it. The phone rang. Whitaker. Marcus hesitated, then answered. Hale, Whitaker said, clipped. I told you to stay quiet. Now it's spiraling. Because they're lying, Marcus shot back. They're painting me as the threat. Whitaker's tone turned cold. You don't understand how this works. The Bureau doesn't want its agents in the middle of public fights. If you speak out, you'd drag us all into it. Marcus's stomach dropped. So you'd rather let them destroy me? A pause. I'm telling you to think about your career. The line went dead. Marcus stood frozen, phone still in hand, the silence roaring in his ears. Maya's voice cut through. They don't want the truth. They want you disposable. Daniels nodded grimly. If you wait for the Bureau to save you, you'll be waiting forever. The rest of the day unraveled like a storm. Online trolls dug into his past, twisting old college photos, quoting him out of context. Anonymous posts labeled him anti-police. Commentators questioned whether he'd even earned his FBI post. By evening, Marcus's face was plastered across every channel. Some praised him as a symbol of resistance. Others painted him as a dangerous agitator. He had become a battlefield. Exhausted, Marcus sank onto the couch. Maya sat beside him, fierce as ever. You can't stay silent, she said. Silence is surrender. He looked at her, then at Daniels, who stood near the window, arms crossed. The weight of their eyes pressed him toward the decision he had avoided all week. Finally he spoke, voice raw. They want me erased, but I'm still here. Maya's hand tightened around his. Daniels gave a single nod. Marcus exhaled, the words tasting like iron. Then tomorrow, I go public. The studio lights burned hotter than Marcus expected. He sat stiff in the chair, palms sweating against his knees as the cameras rolled. Across from him, the host leaned forward, smile sharpened like a blade. Agent Hale, she began, voice syrupy. The footage of your arrest has divided the country. Some see you as a victim of profiling. Others say you disrespected the officers. How do you respond? Marcus's throat tightened. He could almost hear Whitaker's warning echo. Stay quiet. Protect the Bureau. But Maya's words cut sharper. Silence is surrender. He leaned into the mic. What happened wasn't a misunderstanding. It was power. Power used against me because of how I look. I followed every command. I showed my badge. They still dragged me to the ground. That's not policing. That's abuse. The host's smile faltered. But the union is lying, Marcus snapped louder than he intended.
And they know the cameras caught it. Gasps rippled through the audience.
The host blinked, regrouped. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, Marcus said, steady now. It's reality. For a long moment, the studio went still. After the interview aired, the city felt electric. On one side, chants and marches filled the streets. Justice for Marcus Hale. On the other, counter-protesters carried flags and shouted back, accusing him of betraying the badge. Daniels shoved through the crowd to Marcus's side, muttering, It's bigger than you now. Way bigger. Marcus scanned the faces, hopeful, angry, terrified, defiant. His name had become a rallying cry, but his life had become a target. That night, a brick shattered his apartment window. Marcus and Maya hit the floor as glass sprayed across the room. A note tied to the brick read, Traitor. Maya's breath came ragged. They want to scare us into silence. Marcus picked up the note, fingers trembling, but his voice was steady. Then they don't know me. The next day, the backlash escalated. A press conference. The mayor flanked by police brass. This city will not tolerate reckless accusations that endanger public trust in law enforcement, the mayor declared, jaw tight. Agent Hale's comments are under review. We urge residents to remain calm. Marcus watched on TV, fury rising in his chest. They're painting me as the threat again. Daniels slammed the remote down. They're closing ranks. That means they're scared. Marcus stared at the frozen screen. The mayor's lips caught mid-condemnation, the chief's smug eyes. They're scared of the truth, Marcus said, his voice low, dangerous. So we push harder. By evening, protesters filled City Hall's steps. The crowd pulsed with chants, drums, raised fists. Marcus walked to the front, Maya gripping his hand tight, Daniels at his back. He raised his voice over the roar. They tried to erase me, but you all see me. You see the truth. This isn't just about me. It's about every life crushed under lies, every voice silenced by fear. And I won't back down. Not tonight. Not ever, the chant exploded. Not ever. Not ever. Police lines shifted uneasily, shields gleaming under streetlights. For a heartbeat the air felt on the edge of shattering. A single bottle flew. The crack of glass against riot gear set off chaos. Shouts, sirens, smoke rising as the crowd surged and scattered. Marcus and Maya were shoved back into the crush. Daniels fought to keep them together. Move, Daniels barked, dragging Marcus toward an alley. They'll pin this on you if you're here when it blows. Marcus stumbled into the shadows, chest heaving. The sound of rubber bullets snapping through the night. His voice shook as he whispered into the chaos. More to himself than anyone else. They wanted a breaking point. They just got it. The city was still smoking from the night before. News drones hovered above streets littered with broken glass and burned-out trash cans. Helicopters thudded overhead like a war zone. Marcus stood at the window of Daniel's apartment, staring at the skyline. Sirens wailed, echoing in waves. On TV, the narrative was already shifting. Footage of police firing into the crowd played side by side with clips of protesters scattering. Bloodied, anchors asked if the department had gone too far. The words police brutality slid across the bottom of the screen. Daniel stepped up beside him. They overplayed their hand. That footage is everywhere. No spin can bury it now. Marcus didn't look away from the screen. Officers shoving teenagers. A woman coughing through tear gas. A baton cracking across someone's back. He felt his jaw lock. They thought they could silence me with fear, Marcus said quietly. Now the city's seen what I saw. By noon, the dominoes started falling. A leaked email circulated. Police brass instructing officers to maintain control at all costs. The words, "Do not hesitate to use force," glowed like an admission of guilt. Within hours, another leak dropped. Body cam footage from one of the arresting officers. It showed Marcus with hands raised, calm, silent before being tackled and pinned. No resistance. No escalation. Maya slammed her laptop shut, eyes blazing. It's out. They can't deny it anymore. Daniels grinned without humor. That's checkmate. Marcus sat heavily on the couch, pulse racing. Relief battled rage in his chest. They knew. They all knew. Maya touched his hand. Now everyone does. The evening news delivered the first crack in the armor. A city councilwoman demanded the police chief's resignation. What we saw last night and what we see on these tapes is not policing, it's oppression. The mayor's office went silent, no longer defending. By nightfall, the police union held another press conference. This time, the man at the podium sweated visibly, his voice strained. We will cooperate fully with investigators. We ask the public for patience. Marcus watched from Daniel's living room, heart pounding. That's not patience, he muttered. That's panic, but collapse wasn't clean. The pushback came sharp, desperate. Anonymous threats filled Marcus's inbox. You destroyed good men. You'll pay for it. Commentators on certain networks still called him a liar, a fraud, a disgrace. Maya snapped one evening, slamming the TV remote on the counter. They're grasping at ashes. They know it's over. Marcus leaned forward, eyes fixed on the screen. Not until the chief answers. Not until the ones who dragged me to the ground are stripped of their badges. Daniels looked at him, studying. And then what? Justice won't erase the scar. Marcus exhaled slowly. He knew Daniels was right. Even if the walls fell, the wound stayed, but still, collapse mattered. Exposure mattered. Days later, the chief finally appeared before cameras flanked by city officials. His eyes were flat, his words clipped. In light of recent revelations, I will be stepping down effective immediately. The city erupted. Cheers in the streets. Headlines blaring. Police chief resigns amid scandal. Marcus sat in the back of the press conference, hood pulled low, unseen. He listened to the applause outside and felt nothing. Maya turned to him, searching. You did this. Marcus shook his head slowly. The truth did this. I just refused to disappear. That night, for the first time in weeks, Marcus walked outside without fear. Protesters filled the streets, but this time the chant sounded different. Less rage, more triumph. Yet beneath the noise he carried silence. The image of his face pressed to asphalt. The sound of cuffs snapping shut. The knowledge it could happen again. To someone else. Tomorrow. As the crowd surged around him, chanting his name, Marcus whispered to himself, It's not over. Collapse is only the beginning. The courtroom was silent except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Cameras lined the back wall, reporters scribbling notes with every pause. Marcus sat in the front row, suit pressed but hands clenched tight in his lap. The trial of the arresting officers had drawn the nation's eye. For weeks, testimony poured in. Witnesses, experts, the damning body cam footage. Every detail of that night had been dissected. And now it was closing arguments. The prosecutor's voice cut sharp. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not complicated. You saw the video. You saw Agent Hale comply. And you saw those officers slam him into the pavement anyway. They didn't act out of fear. They acted out of prejudice. That badge on his belt wasn't invisible. They just didn't want to see it. The jury shifted, eyes heavy with the weight of evidence. Across the room, the defense squirmed. Their argument, split-second decision, chaotic situation, hung limp in the air, worn thin. Maya reached for Marcus's hand, her grip firm, grounding. He felt her warmth pulse against his skin, and for the first time since that night, a sliver of hope pressed through the cracks in his chest. The verdict came down after only 3 hours. Guilty. The word echoed through the chamber, clear and final. On charges of false arrest, abuse of authority, and civil rights violations, the officers were convicted. Gasps and whispers spread like wildfire, followed by a murmur of relief. Marcus sat frozen. He'd imagined this moment 100 times, but reality hit differently. Heavy, sharp, almost unreal. The judge's gavel struck. Order. Outside, the courthouse steps overflowed with supporters. Chants rose in the air. Justice for Marcus. Justice for all. Daniels clapped him on the back, a rare grin cracking through his usual steel. You did it. They fell. Marcus shook his head, eyes scanning the crowd. We did it. But the cost? That night, Marcus finally returned to his own apartment. The broken glass was gone, the window replaced, but the space felt scarred. He stood in the living room, staring at the spot where the brick had landed. Maya came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. It's over, she whispered. Marcus let the word sit. Over. He wasn't sure if that word existed anymore. He had won, but his faith in the system was shattered beyond repair. He turned slowly, resting his forehead against hers. Justice isn't the same as healing, she didn't argue. She just held him tighter. The next morning, Marcus walked into FBI headquarters. Colleagues looked at him differently now. Some nodding with respect, others averting their eyes, ashamed or afraid. Whitaker waited in his office, stone-faced. You've become a symbol, Whitaker said flatly. That makes you a liability. Marcus met his gaze steady. Or it makes me a reminder of what this badge is supposed to mean. For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Then Whitaker sighed, leaning back. Don't mistake this verdict for a revolution. The machine doesn't change overnight. Marcus nodded once. I know. That's why I'm still here. He turned and left before Whitaker could answer. Weeks later, Marcus stood at a community center podium, not in uniform, not as Agent Hale, but as himself. Children filled the front rows, parents behind them. The room smelled of sweat and old wood, but it buzzed with energy. He cleared his throat, the crowd quieting. When they threw me on the ground, I thought it was the end. But it wasn't. It was a beginning. Not because I fought alone, but because you all refused to let them bury the truth. Applause filled the room. Marcus smiled faintly, though the smile didn't erase the shadows in his eyes. Justice is not a finish line, he continued. It's a struggle, and it's one we carry together. The room erupted, voices rising in unity. Later that night, alone, Marcus sat on his balcony, city lights stretching endless below. The noise of chants, sirens, and news cycles had faded to a low hum. He touched the scar at his temple, a reminder of asphalt against skin. Poetic justice had been served. His abusers condemned, the powerful unmasked. But scars don't vanish with verdicts. Marcus closed his eyes, breathing in the night air. They tried to erase me, he whispered. Now I'll make sure no one else disappears. And for the first time in months, he felt the faint, fragile shape of peace